These next videos will go from the design that you created in Photoshop to making that a real website from scratch, so to speak. We'll be using Dreamweaver. Remember, there are no blogs on this website. That's what we were using WordPress for. So first step is always to define that site, create a new folder, point to that folder. So we'll go into Dreamweaver, point to this folder. I'm going to go through this quickly. If you need a review on how to define a site, then go to the video that was assigned earlier for such purposes. Okay, so our local root folder has been chosen and we are ready to go. Let's go ahead and make our first page, file new. We'll make sure that we're selecting HTML, that is HTML5. And in these videos, we'll start letting Dreamweaver do some work for us. So first page we're going to make will be our home page, so we can put the title in there. That'll write the code for that. If we had a CSS page already, we could take care of that. But for now, just this. You can see Dreamweaver did quite a bit of work for us already. Inside the head exists the title for the page. It's titled Home, and then we can start populating the body. Now I'm going to move over to Photoshop and look at those. I came up with some designs as a sample. You have yours. What I'll do is I'll try to make one for each of the main types of design. And what I mean by that is, in my mind, usually the header, navigation and such is either at the top, or you have what they call an aside. So let's zoom in here and I can show you the differences. So this is with the header up at the top, the navigation inside of it, and then here is where you have what's known as an aside that contains the navigation. The first thing we'll do is just type all this stuff in here, and ideally do this from a Word doc so you know there's no misspellings or anything. So here's everything contained on my website. Gonna copy, go into Dreamweaver, go into the body, and I am going to paste that in there. Before we get too far, remember we want to be saving, so we're going to go File, Save As. First page of your site is always called what? Index, lowercase I, and go ahead, click Save, and then we see that now shows up here into our local root folder. Now, don't do this. What I'm about to do here, I want to save a second version of this. And I don't want to confuse anybody here by calling this like index 2 or anything, so I'll just call this aside HTML, and you'll see why in a second. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting in tags around here so that the CSS can talk to it, and I'm going to do the first one with this design in mind right here, this style of design, but I'm gonna do this one. Now I do want to point out real quick, if you're doing a portfolio website, as you probably heard me say many times now, simple is best. You know, if you had a choice between this design and this design, I'd probably say portfolio would be better with this one. But just so that I can show you colors and stuff along the way, and you know, make the CSS more interesting and more obvious what's happening when I change a color, we'll stick with colors rather than just grayscale. So the first design will be this, but then anyone who's doing what's called an aside, I'll show you what's different about that. So back into Dreamweaver, we are going to start wrapping this stuff with proper tags to make sure that our body here or our layout in Dreamweaver looks similar. If you're not in standard mode, switch over to standard mode. If it still doesn't look quite right, go to reset standard. And then you won't have a second site in here or a second page. You'll just have one page named index HTML, and that's the page we'll be working on. And then instead of us doing the tags manually, we're going to use some help from Dreamweaver. Start with the basics like heading tags and paragraph tags. So Biggest thing on there would be my name as the designer. So I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to go over to this area here, and where it says files, I'm going to change that. Click on the tab for inserts, and then I can see different options in here. So that's going to be an H tag. So right here there's a little down facing caret. I'm going to click on that, select an H1 tag, and then this thing that says welcome, I'm going to assume that's going to end up being another H, but it's a little bit smaller, so we'll make that a H2. This stuff right here is going to be our navigation. So in that case, that we got to go down a little bit for it to see the new HTML5 things. So there we go, nav, click on that. And then these new tags give you some options, but we just need the most basics right now. We don't have to do anything to it other than we want this option here where it says wrap around the selection, since we grabbed the whole thing. Click OK. That's been taken care of. Looks like this whole thing right here would just simply be a paragraph. So back up to the top, we saw paragraph. Click on that. And then this section, now we'll actually get into some more of the new tags. We know this is going to be a footer. And remember, all this stuff helps search engines and so on. And we don't need to do anything special here other than just wrap around the selection. Most of what I've done here would apply to just about anybody, or just about any design, I should say. Now we'll start doing the differences between one style and another. So if you look up here, all of this stuff is in the header. This, what is now an H1 tag, and the navigation. So let's wrap that entire thing with a header tag. So once again, just a simple selection of it, and then finding these things. Remember, you got a scrollable area here. Double click header. Now that whole thing is wrapped around, and then this whole area, we will wrap that in a section tag, everything but the footer. And we've already taken care of the footer, so it looks like the only difference for people with the sides is you're going to have this whole area here be an aside, because everything from this H1 to the nav is on the side. Now if you have some kind of hybrid design, you'll have to think about this and apply what makes sense. But let's go and let's take all of what we've done, and let me just make that one change for those of you that that applies to. Okay, so only if you want this section to be on the side, you'd get rid of that from saying header, and grab the H1 in the nav, and then choose aside. Now notice nothing changes really in the design. That's what the CSS is for, but this will help us target these things with CSS. And then I would say the last thing we want to do is clean this up. So everything inside of the body, let's just tab that over so it's nice and indented. And please do this, especially if you're going to be asking for help, because it's a heck of a lot easier if things indent within the tag. So everything in the body indents, and then everything inside the aside or header, for those of you with a header, indents. Everything inside the section indents, and then the footer. So basically what we have are the three main HTML5 tags inside the body: the aside, the section, and the footer, or instead of aside, header, section, footer. All right, so that's a great start. You can see it's taken on a little bit of styling just with the HTML tags, but we'll do much better than that